Good afternoon, folks, and welcome to episode 6, I believe. Last episode we talked about the free software program Raw Therapy, that's with 2 E's, and we threw Brad in the deep end on that. Brad had never seen that software before last week, and so I think it was a pretty fair introduction to it and a pretty fair observation of it. So hope you've been able to use it and hope you're getting some benefit from it. This week we're going to change tack just a little bit, and we're going to talk about what we personally enjoy the most out of photography. There's a lot of different aspects to it, and so we're just going to delve into that a little bit and play with that and see where we go. And I'll take you back very briefly to episode 1, if you remember that one.
Oh no.
And Brad was sourcing out some venues for us for the studio.
I think that house was fine, Grant.
And he found a house with no roof. I did make mention of the fact that it might rain. That wasn't a problem, Brad?
I don't know what you're talking about there, Grant.
No. Well, given that we've had about 60 odd millimetres here in the last week, hailstones and all the rest of it.
Still would have been fine.
Yeah, that's right. We probably would have been, but your gear might have been looking quite as pristine as it is now. So all good fun. Folks, so what we're going to do today is have a look at Brad's work and what drives Brad into taking this type of stuff and his emotions behind it and the reasons behind it. So, Brad,
I'll swap places. You can actually try and control this contraption.
Right. Well, Brad, I happen to know where this was because I was there when you were terrifying everyone with your...
This one?
Yep, with your drone.
Okay, this photo here, Flinders Ranges, and this was a South Coast Camera Club trip, I believe. So I can't remember, usually we have about 18 members that go on our trips, which are well supported. So this was early, getting up nice and early in the morning, and I took a heap of photos with my normal camera, but I also have one of those annoying drones that some people would love to swat out the sky, but I sent, and I think it was a DJI Mavic, I think I took that one with. So I flew that out probably about a K. I could still just see it with some binoculars. And no one around. I don't fly drones when there's people around. Yeah, I came across a hill that funny enough, this shot, the drone would have only been probably a couple of metres off of an actual hill. So as much as it looks like it's up a long way, there was a hilltop. From the information and from where I could see, it was only just on top of the hill. I just loved all these lines, leading lines. So I actually manoeuvred the craft, and it took me a little while to line it all up, but I wanted these hill lines to lead out from the corner and draw your eye in. So if you are using drone, there's actually, if you put your knowledge of camera craft to your drone, you can actually line up good shots with your drone, and got that nice morning early light onto the ranges, and I've had a few people comment about that, and I've even sold an image of that as well. So
well done. I remember the sky that morning, Brad, was pretty magnificent too.
It was.
From memory. Seeing a little bit of it in that shot. Brad, coming down to the next one, we'll come across to the mono at the top there. Tell us about that. That's an interesting shot.
That is Western Australia. So I tried, and thanks for printing this up for me, Grant, but I tried to use, and these are all Australian photos. I had a trip over Western Australia on a Darren Leal trip, which is, he usually has small groups. Well, actually this one was he has rare events where he invites over quite a few instructors. This was a little bit larger than his normal group, but we went over into the sand dunes I found this interesting was that it was at sunset, finished photographing a lot of dunes and different things with shadows over ripples, and I saw a little clump of well, they're almost like weeds. I just was interested with the shadows coming through, and I decided to put the sun behind the object so I wouldn't completely blow out my camera. Exposed for the sun being in front of the camera, and I just liked all the shadows coming in and that keeping it very dark and silhouette.
Mm. So what lens did you use there, Brad?
That one would have been my 14 to 24,
okay.
So a very wide lens, and I shot close to the ground, getting really low,
yep.
and getting more perspective, which a 14, a super wide lens,
yep.
is great for giving that real emphasis of
yep.
foreground
yep.
moving through.
Any filters?
No filters.
No filters, that's
No.
interesting. Okay, let's just come across and down by your right shoulder, the owl.
The owl.
The owl.
Yep, this is a telephoto lens, so this was with my 200 to 500 lens, and cropping in as well. So not only and targeting focus on the eye, and having the light, having the sun behind you as well. There's a lot of, when you're doing nature photography, there's a lot you got to deal with. You got to, and this is why a lot of people take a lot of nature photos, and you end up with a lot that are no good because the light's wrong, the animal's in the wrong position or whatever. I wanted a nice close profile, have no distractions, and to keep the background simple and getting that eye sharp. So I always use single point focus on my camera, used a really long lens with a high megapixel camera on a tripod. Quite often I don't have a tripod, but in this case the animal's sitting, so I was able to use a tripod, getting in real close and then cropping a lot with my camera. So using those megapixels
yep.
to my advantage and cropping in so you still can keep a lot of that detail.
Right, very good. And now this is actually my favourite image out of this set of yours, and I'm going to guess that this might have also been in Western Australia. That's the yep.
The dunes?
Yeah, the dunes.
Yep, same spot. So there's some fantastic dunes over in Western Australia. There's also the pinnacles as well, which I photographed. Actually, I was a little bit quick and lazy, but that's the same. That's Western Australia. That's the group that we were with. That's the same morning, I reckon it was, where we were walking came across this dune, and just getting the morning rays, sun's coming in from the left, and it was giving us all lovely detail here and lovely shadows and the leading lines.
Yeah,
so I had a lot of sand in my boots that morning. Yeah. I think a lot of us did.
Yeah.
Because you're just racing around looking for interesting shapes and shadows. That was one. It was quite a large sand hill, and just walking around and trying not to leave footprints, which is difficult when you're in groups of people.
Yep.
But if you work as a team, and Darren's very much like that, is to keep the group in order, and if we all approach and do things where we're not messing up shots, it actually all works really well, and then you can get your own photographs.
These, just for the benefit of the viewers, these are printed on a product it's a sealed product called Light Banner, and it's a very light canvas. If you just picked it up, Brad, and just moved it to show people what it's like, it's just a very lightweight banner canvas. It's made for inkjet printing. It does a pretty good job, but gee, I can't help but look at that black and white sand dune image and oh gee, see it on a good matte paper, a good high quality, say Ilford mono paper, and wow, that would be a sensational shot.
Yeah, I haven't got around to printing a lot of these yet, and with canvas, I always add slightly more brightness to my photos, which I forgot about. But so some of these are just a tad dark to what I'd normally print on canvas, whereas these have been set up for printing on the Ilford Pearl smooth peel paper is what it normally print on, which that gives it that extra pop.
Beautiful.
But even still, these photos I haven't. This was just my last trip, which was to Western Australia, so I haven't got around to actually framing big shots yet.
Okay, we're going to go down the bottom right-hand corner now, Brad. And could you
the wedgie?
Could you have believed your luck when you were looking at this shot through the viewfinder and saw the flying ant on top of the wedgie's head, or did you put it there?
No, I didn't know that there was a flying ant on it for a long time. I've got a lot of shots with that. I think it's a wasp.
Okay.
It's a type of wasp. I had to research what is that sticking out of his butt, and I did a research, and I think it's a type of wasp that lays eggs in. Now I could be wrong against this. Native bees and different things that have their homes in little hollows, and I think that's there to lay its eggs in a like a bee home or whatever you want to call it, a bee hole. I hadn't really noticed it. I saw this eagle once again sitting and looking around. Same sort of thing. I wanted a close profile of it, and it wasn't until after a little while that I did notice that he had something on his head. Same sort of thing. I was set up on tripod, long lens, and also cropping with the camera. And that because you can only get so close to a lot of these types of birds and before they fly off. So the main thing is to have a nice high shutter speed, very fast shutter speed, to take movement out, and that way you get the feather detail as well.
Okay.
Freezing the action.
We'll talk about a bit of cropping shortly. The silhouette shot we've talked about. Tell us about the seal.
Okay, that's Kangaroo Island. Long lens again, and I actually used the boardwalk as a tripod because I didn't have a tripod with me. I rested it on there and waited for everybody to walk off the boardwalk, and I saw this little baby seal playing around. Just kept my focus point on the eye again, just waiting for it to do something interesting. Well, it ended up waddled up into this little area, and then it was playing around with the bush, and I thought fantastic, so I started rattling them off. And then I got this photo of it. It bit into the bush, didn't like it, and spat it out straight afterwards. But I sort of captured that moment.
You actually raised a good point with landscape photography, which is one of my favourite genres, if you like, and the need to be patient. That you're going to go and visit venues. And be disappointed because it's overcast or it's raining. And
are you trying to say something there, Grant?
Nothing at all.
Raining.
So you have to be patient. You have to be prepared to go back.
You do.
You have to do your research and your homework on your venue, and you may have to do 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 trips back to that venue or more until you get the shot you want. Now, I appreciate if you're on the tour bus and the tour bus pulls up and you've got half an hour and the grumpy old driver's saying, get back on the bus, then you've got no choice. You have to take a record shot, and you do that using the best technique and capabilities you can. But if you're going out after some serious landscape photography to capture stuff that you might want to print up or treasure, then do your homework. Do your research and look into things, and be prepared to be disappointed, but be prepared to go back.
And always don't think with photography that I'm going to come back to and get that shot. If you see a shot, get it straight away. And it reminds me of my trip to Alaska, hunting the bears. The very first day, we were out in the remote areas, out in the wilderness, and there was black bears and there was the odd brown bear, and I was happily snapping away, thinking, had all these shots in mind, and thinking, I've got 3 days of this, because usually I'll stay in one area for a length of time because wildlife is like that. Well, the next day there wasn't a single bear. I was out there the whole day, not a bear. The rest of the trip, no bears, which was odd. We were down by a salmon creek, and they had moved on. And
yes, but Brad, you do realise that you had booked the budget trip, so the bears were only paid to arrive there for one day.
I know.
They didn't tell you that?
No, they didn't. They didn't tell me that at all.
Well,
so the rest of the trip was basically just waiting, and we had to go home with nothing. And I know it's a bit of a shame, but I did have that one good day of photography, which I got some great shots. But it's definitely on my list to go back there because I have got all these shots in mind. And I was sort of a little bit too relaxed and not taking in the great moment that I had, thinking that these bears are going to be here for days fishing in the creeks, which quite often they are. You can get the opposite as well, where you spend full days and not get anything. So and that's with all animal photography. If you're shooting out in the wild, you can be there on days on end. And then all of a sudden you'll get a moment, and it can be the most exciting moment, and you sort of got to be prepared and ready for that moment to capture it because it can be just gone that quick.
Yeah. And you make a really good point here. The difference between a trip, a vacation, and a photography expedition, safari, adventure trip, call it what you like. They're actually quite stark, aren't they? The differences.
Oh yeah.
And your points that you just made are very pertinent. That, folks, if you're really keen on your photography, and maybe this is something Brad and I can explore going forward, look into going on photography trips, purely photography trips. Be prepared to be getting up in the dark. Be prepared to be floundering around.
You need a holiday, honestly, after
the trip.
After a trip, and I've been on a few of the pro guys' trips, which are actually quite good to go on as well. They can be a bit expensive, but if you can save up and afford one, it is nice to do one every now and then. And I've done a couple of different photographers. I've done quite a bit with Darren Lill. But they're good to go on, and you need a holiday afterwards. But you can also include, and I know Darren does this, and I think a lot of them do, between their trips, is there's always 2 or 3 days to relax. So it's important that if you do go away and you go absolutely nuts on photography, where you're getting up early in the mornings and you're having really late nights, because that's when you're photographing, is that you do have those breaks to enjoy yourself. And always remember, when you're at these places, quite often, if things have died down a bit, is always take in the landscape and the sheer beauty. Grant caught me, we had a trip over in America, and where quite a few of our camera club people went to, which is a massive trip for a camera club. But a couple of times he'd see me and I'd be just staring, especially like Grand Canyon, staring at it and not photographing. If there was nature there, I'd be on my guard, because I know moments you've got to grab them straight away. But also take in what you're looking at, and enjoy the experience of being there, and then take your moments either before or after that, because when you go and see, it's like a lot of these photos, like with that photo, okay, people outside might go, oh yeah, that's a nice photograph, but I've got a memory attached to that photograph. I know where I was, who I was with.
That's right.
And I know what I felt, the experience and everything when I took that photograph. It wasn't just photography, it was also the experience of being there to take that.
And therein lies the great challenge of photography. If you can somehow capture that in your image, and it's there in most images if you go looking for it. Your black and white top centre there actually captures that emotion. The low level, the bit of the sun halo and the cloud. There's a lot of stuff going on in there, and it's got some feeling, some emotion to it, and that's incredibly important. And you come down to your night shot, middle left, and you talk about photography trips, specialist trips. The word we can dream up for them, Brad. But you have to be prepared to be getting up at 4 or 5 a.m. in the morning.
Yep.
And you may not get to bed until midnight.
That's right. Yep.
And that can happen fairly often. And then in between that, during the day when you're in the poorer light, you'll probably be driving fairly long distances to the next venue.
Yep.
So then they're not cakewalks, and this is what you get if you put in the hard yards. Tell us about the night shot, Brad.
That was experience, and it looks great on a screen lit up. This one here was an experimental shot. It was late at night with the Milky Way over the top, but I was actually very close to the tree. Super wide lens on, 14 to 24 on tripod, long exposures, and I think there's about 30 or 40 photographs in that photo. So what I did was I tipped my camera up on its side, so I took it portrait. Then I took it in a series of photos portrait. Because I was so close to this tree, it was like 1 photo, 2, 3, 4. So I did that all the way along there, and then I moved the camera up and I did it all along again along the sky. I then put it into Lightroom. I think it was Lightroom or either Photoshop. I think it was Lightroom I did it. And I was wondering whether it was going to be able to do it. It took a long time, and I did this when I was there. I always carry a laptop with me whenever I go out photographing, and that's like major trips, always have a laptop with me. And it spent most of the night trying to join the thing together, and I just thought, I don't know whether it's going to do it or not. Plugged it into power to make sure it wouldn't go flat. This is what it came out with. The light on the tree, sometimes I use a torch, but in this case, we were staying in tents. A car from another tent decided to leave at this particular night, and that was just in one of the shots. It was the car lights that shone and brought the tree up, and the bit of red going through the tree is when he hit the brakes.
Yeah, the tail lights.
So so for the photo that was here, I made sure it was the one that was lit up. So I didn't have to light that with a torch. A car did it for me.
Excellent. If you're wondering about how to do that, you've actually prompted me, Brad, to think that here's a little show in its own that we can probably do.
Yep.
And if you don't own Lightroom or any of the Adobe products, I'm going to steer you towards a product called Microsoft Image Composite Editor. Okay, I'll repeat that. Just Google Microsoft Image Composite Editor. And that's another free program. So download that. It is very, very good. It's one of the best stitching programs that I've ever used, and I used the one in Lightroom as well. But ICE is excellent. So we'll have a look at that in the future. So Brad, look, thanks for that. But what's your favourite? I mean, we've got many favourite genres, types of photography, but I'm going to take a really wild stab in the dark here and say that landscape is probably your strength, your first love.
It could be. I'll take photos of anything. I think myself as an all-rounder, but if you're going to pick out one I do most, it would be a toss-up between landscape and nature. Yep. I do put a lot of nature stuff in.
Yep.
I'd probably get more enjoyment out of nature stuff, whether it's because I'm a farmer and a bit like you, Grant, have that connection And that's probably landscape as well, that bit more of a connection with the land and the animals on it.
Yep.
But I also get enjoyment if I can nail a nature shot, because quite a lot of mine is done out in nature. Nothing wrong with zoos, and I take photos in zoos and parks as well. But the satisfaction of capturing a unique moment with an animal, with a great landscape is very tricky. And when you get a lot of satisfaction out of it if you can nail that. Not to put anything past landscapes, any photography really, because no matter what you take photos, I do hear the odd comments from other people or judges. I hear something, oh, well, you could just go out to your back garden and photograph that, or you could just go out and, you know, that's just a bird on a log or something like that. Well, that's a yes and no answer as far as I'm concerned, because, okay, yeah, you can go out and say, take a photo of a rose, but can you go out and take a good shot of a rose? A good photograph that relays a story or something to the viewer. I think that is the challenge, where it's not just another photo of, say, a flower, which is another thing. I take a lot of photos of flowers and bush as well. That doesn't go to camera club too much, but just in my own collection. But that's the challenge, is if you can take a good photo of, you know, a flower, an insect, a bird or whatever, that takes a lot of technique to do, even if it is just outside your door.
Yep. We'll involve one of our South Coast Camera Club members one day in this conversation, in Rob McCauley. Rob, in his new house and a terrific big backyard, and he's set up some terrific stuff there, and I call Rob the Renmeister.
Yep.
I've been out with Rob shooting, and wrens will come up and sit in front of Rob and pose for him. I walk up alongside Rob and they will go and fly back into the bush.
Yeah, they've gotten used to him.
They just, I mean, I can walk around there all bloody day and not see a wren, and Rob turns up and they're clustered around him, so I don't know what it is, but he certainly has a touch with them. But in his
he has a touch with the chicks.
That must be it. That's probably it. But he has created in his backyard a lot of hollow logs and stuff, and he's getting some fabulous work of wrens in logs and stuff like that. So we'll leave it there for now, because I've got something red flashing on here, Brad.
Okay.
I don't know what that would be.
No, not a problem. So with that, we'll finish this episode. So yeah, give us a thumbs up if you liked the video, and hit subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll see you in the next video.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.